Welcome everyone. In this episode of P.E.T, we're here with Michael Bongiovanni, a student at BYU-Idaho, history education major. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
I've played chess for a while now. I grew up in Virginia. I have a father, grandfather over here, and both of them we've played a lot of chess over the years. But I didn't really start getting into it until more recently, about the time that I started going to college. And soon after, a friend who noticed that I was playing a lot more online, he said, "Hey, you should go play over the board. I saw these guys over at the chess club." And so I've been playing in the BYU-Idaho Chess Club for maybe 2 years at this point, probably a little bit more than that now.
Yeah.
And yeah, absolutely love it. Have a few games here that I played just from a few different tournaments. A little bit of the good, bad, and the ugly, between everything that I
It's all
played.
right.
But I do enjoy it. I can't say that I play very well, but I do have a good time when I do it. So
No, that's good. So far, what is your peak online rating, first of all, on chess.com, let's say, and also your peak USCF rating, right? Because you're playing some rated tournaments.
yeah, so right now, I push rapid online. That's mainly what I try to work on. And right now, I'm at 1860. That's the highest I've ever been, rapid rated online. So I'm pushing for 1900 right now. And then over the board, I just also got my new most recent highest rating, and that's at 1311 while we're playing classical.
Awesome. And here we have three games they're going to be sharing that you've had. I think the first game is at the 2024 Idaho Closed tournament in Boise, Idaho. The second game is BYU Idaho, and the third game is a simultaneous exhibition, right, against one of the grandmasters, Rashad Babaev. So I guess we can just
Definitely.
get started with the games here, right? Let's go. So E4, is this usually what you play for the white pieces then?
Oh yeah, 100%. I'm an E4 player, and actually, I like this game. I wanted to share this one, not just because it's a fun one, it's a cool one, but also because it really does show what I like to play. It goes into like my favorite E4 lines. If someone lets me do it, I'm going to do this.
All right, let's check it out. So E4, E5 by your opponent, and here actually just recap, right? So what run is this for the tournament at the Idaho Closed?
So, so this is round three for
Round
this
three,
tournament.
and your
Yeah,
opponent
and
we
at
can
this point, I've
see.
had
Go ahead.
one loss and one win.
One loss and one win. Okay, perfect. And the opponent right now is 200 points higher than you, about 200. So that's pretty nice, right? Let's see. So knight f3, we have a response, and we don't even go for the Spanish, Italian, or anything. We're going for c3 right away.
Now,
What's
yeah,
your?
the Ponziani, I'll tell you, there's a few videos out there that you can find on this, and I've watched pretty much every single one of them because I absolutely love this opening, mainly because it's not one that most people are expecting. When they play e4, e5,
Mhm.
knight f3, and then knight c6, they're kind of expecting a Spanish or an Italian or something. That's
Yeah,
what they prepare for most of the time. C3 throws a lot of people off guard. They're not ready for the Ponziani. It's a very old opening, but it's not very commonly played right now.
yeah, no, right away it just surprises me. It's like, what is going on? But that's good, you know. It's nice to throw people off right away. You know, you're playing something that you're comfortable with, and that's really good. You know. Okay, so knight f6,
Totally.
and we go ahead with the move d4 right away. So we don't even care about the captures or anything. And yeah, we just go ahead for that. And also, we might be thinking, oh, we're just hanging a pawn right here, but that doesn't really work because you can actually gain a pawn back as well, right? With some initiative.
I'll tell you, I love it when they take on e5. There are so many fun tactics here. Most of the lines that I'm aware of, generally the principle is you think if they take this pawn, I push this pawn, and it goes the other way as well. If they take this pawn, I push this pawn, and
Oh
there's some
wow.
crazy stuff that comes out of it. Creates a lot of imbalances, but I prepared a few different lines there, and they're pretty fun to play into. There's like some crazy traps people can get into.
That's nice. All right, let's move forward here. So captures, and we push the pawn, making it uncomfortable for the opponent. The opponent just goes forward, and we just have the center. Here we're controlling the center. Pretty good, right? Okay, so we have bishop e7, and now we're just attacking the knight. Very common response here, attacking the bishop at the same time. And we just retreat back, and that's a very powerful I-square bishop, right? Having that knight scope. Little sniper situation. Okay, castles, castles. Very normal game so far.
As I say, I was happy to be here at this point because this is very much common stuff that you'll get for the position. But I'll admit, I don't spend a long time memorizing very much anything past the first 10 moves of the game. At that point, I kind of feel it out and I play chess. And so this is, I think, probably the start of setting things up for where it gets really weird here. The middle game is absolutely wild, and it's because I wasn't exactly sure where to go with this. So I get a little bit creative here, take some
All
liberties
right,
with
let's
this
see.
position.
And this is probably your play style. I want to, respect there, respect. So, okay,
Totally.
pinning your knight, because the queen is being attacked through extra evasion here. If we were to move the knight somewhere or whatever, anywhere, they can just capture our queen, so we need to be careful here. And then now, there's a lot of tension with different pieces, right? Like the knight's protecting the e5 square, also protecting the pawn here in d4. So it is very tricky because there are some ideas of maybe capturing or something, capturing here. If you capture with a queen, the knight's attacking, forking the queen and the bishop. So we gotta be careful with the situations, right? So here we just capture. Perfect. They capture back with the bishop. And then we just defend, developing the last minor piece, I guess, and defending the pawn in the middle. Perfect. Rook into the middle, and now we kick the bishop out. Bishop retreats, and now we're going for the crazy stuff. Okay, tell us a little bit about this move here, knight b5. Why are we going away for the bishop right away?
Totally. Now, I'll tell you, my intuitions were kind of warning me. I always get to this point in any game where I know I really shouldn't do this, but also I really want to do this. And this is totally one of those moves.
Yeah.
And really, it's because you look at this diagonal, the bishop really can't sit here very long. The dark square bishop, he doesn't have anywhere to go along this whole area. So that means I'm kind of getting him to commit. I'm like, where do you want to go with this thing? You're not going to go over here, are you? You're going to just slide back? And really,
Yeah.
the thought process is, well, once that's gone, now I have a nice knight. Looking at this, maybe a fork here in the future. Obviously, I need to set some pieces, but I like getting
Yeah.
my pieces into aggressive spots. That's
Yeah.
the ideal for me, somewhere where they can kind of cause damage in the future. So even though I know I'm kind of overextending, and by the way, that is what the computer says, it's still my thought process of what I
It's
wanted to
okay.
do here.
And that's the thing. Like sometimes we get too excited, like thinking, "Oh, I didn't follow the. How did I not see that with the computer?" Right? The computer is like, but always following the computer. We're not playing chess like humans, right? So if we're always relying on
No,
the computer, like that's not normal. Like that's not natural.
definitely not.
Okay, so they retreat the bishop. Obviously, they don't want to give the advantage of the bishop here, right? Um, and then now,
Probably
oh,
not.
centralizing our bishop, and
Just
now
continuing with the plan,
we're going for the plan. We're going for the
doubling
plan.
up
That's
on that.
fine. Okay,
Yeah.
and then they just like defend it with the rook so they don't get forked. And now we just bring the knight. We bring the knight in, and things get messy. Probably knight captures. We capture back, and then there's a fork situation here. What is going on? So
This is
during the game,
a.
did you see this continuation? Then I'm assuming, or
I
did
did
they
think
did this
just
like
about
caught you
this
off guard?
far. I'll admit, with the bishop right here, this was something when I played, and I was like, I should have thought about this before I got there. Very quickly, I was like, I'm not too worried. I see some good moves here
Okay.
still, but I was like, okay, I probably should have thought a little bit more carefully about this. Like I said, I have a tendency to rush headlong into things that I'm not necessarily prepared for. Here, though, this worked out pretty well in my favor. There were a few moves that I was considering here, and I
Okay.
wasn't sure. Okay, where are we going to go with this? Because I knew I want to get more of these pieces in here. I was even thinking, what if he just like takes this rook?
Mm-hmm.
But I focus more on my little thing right here. I could probably potentially, there's some attacks coming in here that are
Okay.
going to be pretty powerful. And I'm thinking I'm probably going to win back the exchange, even if I let him take that with the bishop. But
Yeah.
then I came across this move, and the more I thought about it, the more I liked it. And this is the one I actually went with. And
Okay.
I love this because it's such a nonchalant move to play in this position. You push the pawn forward to e6.
E6. Should we so
You ignore everything else going on.
so the computer on the engine, what does it think about its E6? Didn't you say that it consider a brilliant move?
It gives this a brilliant, which is crazy, a pawn push, and it's a brilliant move.
So here they can just capture anything, right? I think ideally they would probably just capture the knight, because if they just capture the rook, you can just capture back at one point, right? Or take this with check first. If they move, you can
Right.
capture and promote, and then be able to capture the rook back, right? So let's say what the opponent did. They just defended. They just defended the pawn. They didn't want to go for that sequence, right? Of if we see like capture here, we have some potential of just capturing with check first, and then whatever they move, you can actually capture the rook, probably with check or something. And then if they capture back, you can just pin this bishop or something. Maybe there's a better follow up. What do you think?
I tell you, I should have looked into it a little bit more carefully. There's some of these lines. I'll tell you at this point, the game does give White a, what is it? It's about a +2 advantage at this. So everything is solid. And I did go through it after the game and look at some of these lines. Some of them are a little bit more tricky than others, but
Yeah,
pretty much everything, it all comes down to move order.
yeah.
But if you take the right way, you should be able to get away with this up material.
Here in this position, like they defend the pawn and then they just capture the pawn on c7. attacking the queen, right? So the queen is a little bit trapped,
Yeah,
almost. Is it? Kind of. They just capture with the rook, and then you capture with check. Always force moves first, not get too excited with like capturing the rook, and then they can just capture
yeah.
something else. Perfect. And then they just move away, capture the rook, and now they capture your rook here. So
And
this
this
is
is
what is going on,
very
you know?
interesting.
It is
Well,
pretty funny because at the end too, you have a little fork situation, but then they can just capture us back, and then um, so you just they capture with your bishop. Makes sense because if you capture with the rook here, right? Now you just have a free bishop here. You have two pieces in the rook, but then you have a potentially promotion here, hopefully. And the thing is, like, the king can never move because the pawn is just blocking here g8. That's very nice. So here, after capturing
yeah.
this, captures the rook, you capture the queen, very forceful, captures with bishop, and now you go for the
And
move knight
now,
e6. So never rushing and capturing this back, but adding more pressure, going for the more valuable pieces, right? Very nice. And then they just captured the pawn. Very the only way, I guess. I mean, not only one. They always have a move like this, I guess, right? To always have this blockade here. But that doesn't really work because at one point you can always bring your rook all the way here, and if they were to do something, the king can never move here because the knight is very annoying. That is a very nice sequence that you were able to find, like before capturing the bishop, doing like knight e6, and then they just capture the pawn. You capture, attacking the rook again.
and this is a great position right here because there's a lot of moves that if they try and go after the knight, you'll see it doesn't work out very well mainly because of the fact that what you're looking at here is the king has only one square if he gets checked. So if the knight ever comes here, gets the chance to, then the king is going to end up walking directly into that line of fire. And that means that once the knight moves, there's going to be an exposed check on the king with a free move from the knight. So a
Yeah,
lot of these lines, if he's not careful, he's going to end up losing another piece.
yeah.
And so that's why
That's why
once we
you
do
went
this,
for
he just, yeah,
knight
he concedes
f7.
the point and he just sacks the exchange. He says, okay, you got me.
It's a
He's not
lot.
going
It's a
to no
lot.
sacrifice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they just retreat the bishop, but you're up the exchange and going for some mate. If they don't do anything here, let's say they make a move like this, now you just have checkmate in two, right? They have to give away the bishop, and that's it. So perfect. Here the opponent obviously was able to see it, give some little square, but then we just give a check, and then we just retreat our bishop. Our bishop is very annoying there, huh? And then just going for the check, trying to protect anything and then capture. I think this is a good move here, just trying to simplify, right? Sometimes we think, oh, like I have a rook, a bishop and stuff, but knights are tricky. Knights are tricky in the end, right? So we can get forked and lose a piece for no reason, and they might as well just simplify. You might be thinking, oh, like it's forking our rook and our pawn, but then I think the move that you found next, I think is pretty good because now you're preventing them from capturing here. You just capture here, putting pressure on the other pawn, which is super nice. They just defend. You defend, and then I think this is totally winning for the white pieces, right? Even I guess if you don't trade your advantage of the higher value piece, but just you can try to simplify at one point. I think that's what you did, right? At one point here, like bishop e6, you just try to like break, and
Definitely.
instead of capturing towards the center, and this is a concept that usually we talk about, right? Like always capture towards the center. We can capture like this, but then like it's a little bit annoying, especially because we have an h8 square, which is a dark square, and then the rook is already blocking the king. So here you just capture it with the f pawn instead.
My thoughts exactly, because here the king is walled off. And so I'm going to have, he only gets over when I say he can get over. Right now, the rook is keeping him from moving over, you know?
No, perfect, because here I guess you have ideas of just bringing your king and then start pushing your pawns forward, right? If you bring your king at
Totally.
one point, if they push the pawn forward, you can actually just push the pawn again. Because if they capture, and like the rook, it's blocking the king. So that's actually amazing.
Definitely.
Perfect. Let's see. And now you go for
And
the
here, yeah,
simplifying everything. And that makes sense because now the king is a little bit away from the pawns. And now you're start marching towards the left side, right? So here I think your opponent resigned, right? After king e3.
yes.
And we can turn the eval, I guess, for people to know what is going on here is like plus 49. So you're going to promote like a bunch of queens. And the idea here
Yeah.
is, right, like if your opponent gets closer to this, by the time he captures the pawn, you're already about to capture the other pawns, and you have 2 on 0 And that's just like an easy promotion, just checkmate pretty soon. Nice. So what were your thoughts for this game? Defeating a 1400 opponent on round 3 of the Idaho Closed. Well, how do you feel?
I was quite excited about this. Of course, I started off with a loss. It was against a 1700, so I wasn't, too distraught about that. I was like, I'm only 1200 at the start of this tournament, so that made sense. But I'll be honest, several of the opponents I had in this tournament, I was a little bit nervous going into those games, but I found an advantage and I took it. This one especially, he let me play into the Ponziani. I was like, we're going to play the Ponziani. I love doing something that pulls the rug out from underneath people's feet. And as you can see, you get some really weird, wacky tactical positions that come out of that. And this one worked out in my favor. Yeah, the end game there, obviously, it seems nice to keep the rook on the board and not create it for the bishop. But you can see that just coming from it, there's not really much they can do. I have a
Yeah.
pawn, an extra pawn, and that's enough of an advantage in this position.
And
So,
this is like
as
a
long as you make it through.
and this is like a decoy pawn, right? So we're just leaving this pawn to die to like deflect the king away from the other pawns, and you can just like eat the other pawns like Pac-Man, I guess, and finish the game. So
You can have
simplifying, I think sometimes it's
it.
easier, right? Because we try to hang on to our pieces, our strong pieces. We want to keep our advantage, but sometimes we can just make it easier like that, you know. Let's move on to the next game. The next game here is the school, right? At BYU-Idaho. So here you're playing the black pieces. And what will be your response to d4 here? What do you usually like to play against
Well, I'll
d4?
tell you, nowadays I love to play. My ideal here is getting into the Alvin counter gambit. Now, I used to be a subject of ridicule there at the club because I remember the first time I ever came in, the first game I played in our chess club out there was the England gambit, which I'm sure if anyone's familiar with the England gambit, it's not a good gambit. You shouldn't be doing that. And really, the
Yeah.
Alvin's pretty unsound as well. But the running joke is I'll find anything that allows you to respond at any point to d4 with e5. E5 will be played at some point if I can.
So
So
here, after
I
c4, we have a5.
we see it e5.
And now it's messy. Now we don't know what to do. So I guess the ideas would be like if they capture here, you have the pawn push, right? And you're splitting these pawns, doubling these pawns up. But if they capture here, you would just capture with the queen probably. If they capture, not sure, maybe you capture the queen or even capture the pawn, I guess. Capturing the queen would like help you not have the castle rights for your opponent, I guess, and maybe capture this pawn at one point. Could be tricky, but so here they actually capture the pawn on d5, capture with a queen, and then knight f3. Knight f3, we have knight c6, and now we're targeting the knight. So here, like you're going for like for queen a5. What do you think also about the like a developing move, probably like bishop b4? Would that be a pretty appropriate move for this
I'll
opening?
be honest, I think I would probably play bishop if I could go back.
Oh,
Part of the
okay.
reason I wanted to show this game is it was a win, and I was very happy about that. But this is a little bit earlier on in my chess
Okay.
playing in over the board tournaments, and so you can see there's a few moves that I think I would have changed if I could go back, and that's definitely one. I think I'd rather use the bishop, do basically the same thing, but now I got another minor piece developed. So I
Perfect.
definitely agree.
And I guess that's the thing. Like when we start, also we're like, thinking of like, oh, I play so perfect, but then we looking back, we're like, oh wait, I would have done everything totally different. That's me looking at my games too from previous tournaments. Like, why did I do that? How did I not see those things? Okay, they capture, we capture, and then we just trade everything, right? Amazing. And now we have a check here with the queen, which is attack. That's pretty nice. Like always defending while attacking or defending while developing another minor piece. That's actually, I
Totally.
usually tell my students that's like a 2-on-1 special, not just making one move, but you have like a one move that does two things. So it's like you're getting more value of your moves. Okay. Oh, defending here the pawn, just moving it up to b6. And now we have a big threat of taking on f7. That's if we're not careful enough, right? Like we can move our pawn or something. They can capture us, and we lose our castling rights, and our king is in the middle of the board, just hanging out there.
Not fun.
Not fun. Exactly. Okay, so here takes, and you just wanna trade the queens. You have an isolated pawn, but it's not too terrible, right? You can always just move your king and like have your bishop get out of the way. And then we just castle long. Perfect. Okay, now just launching an attack towards your king, but then we have a nice Nice move here with bishop g7, bishop b2, and I'm thinking here right away, wait, you can just, yeah, you can just bring the knight to e4. And that's what they did. So they capture here, and then you capture first. That's a good response by the opponent here. Rook a2. I guess some people would probably think something like this, right? Like rook b1, very automatic response from people, you know. But then you can just capture the pawns here and like already targeting all these other ideas. Even though here it's kind of tricky because now you're just trapping your bishop.
So,
Which is not.
yeah, honestly, in a sense, it might be setting up a little bit more of a tricky move for me. Who knows? I might have fallen for that if he did it. I like
So
my pawns.
like instantly I'm thinking, like something like this, it's a blunder. Oh, you blunder a pawn, but then you lose a
Yeah, you always
piece.
got to be careful.
Exactly. So here, all right, perfect. The pawn goes there, defending the pawn, and then we just bring it back. So now we're still even with the pawns, doubling up the rooks. That's a nice defensive maneuver here. I wonder if here the opponent has something like this though.
I want to say, if I looked at it, I do think that was the best move for him. I remember I was considering this, and
Yeah.
it was specifically when this move wasn't played that I was like, oh great, okay, now I feel like I might be able to pull something off here. I was really worried about it. I didn't have a plan if he played f4, so it was. Again, I think that's something definitely that I had to improve on at this point, where I thought,
Yeah.
okay, maybe he can play this move, but I'm not going to worry about that because it looks nice because of other things, right? But
Yeah.
you always need to plan for the toughest lines that your
That's the
opponent could throw at
thing.
you.
Well, sometimes we don't really take our time to calculate these things, especially if it's like a casual game or something like that. We usually just like play around, not really think much. But then now we can see that, yeah, that move is probably not the best because of just f4. F4 just loses the game because now you're losing this pawn with check and the rooks are coming in. And if you do something
Things
like
are
this,
about to
the
fall
knight can just
apart.
capture. If you capture that everything, it's a at least you're losing a pawn. It's not too bad, but still, it's a lot of pressure. A lot of pressure here. The rook can always just target all these other pawns and then have the double up here on the 7th rank for the white pieces. Very uncomfortable, I would think, for the black pieces here. But here after that, I guess the opponent was trying to prepare the move, the pawn to f4 with g3, but a little bit too slow, right? Um,
Just one move too slow.
and now they have it though. But do you have the check here though?
Yeah, the thing is now we come in with our own little move order, and that's really what I was hoping for. When I saw he play G3, I got to go with him with my little wish list because I was really afraid of him having his rooks doubled. I figured let's trade one off,
Yeah.
and now I don't have nearly as much pressure here on this C7 square, and I'm not in as much trouble.
Yeah. Perfect. So they don't capture back. They just take with the king, and now we just capture the rook. Rook takes, and now we're attacking the rook, and now the pawn is lost. Totally the
How do
a3
you
pawn.
defend that with a rook? You can't.
Yeah, but now he actually activates his rook by bringing it to like e6. Not too bad because now you would have some ideas of just pushing your e pawn for the white pieces here. But now you defend. Amazing. After this, the rook has to go back, and we just take the pawn. Go here, takes, and then I attacks. But we don't care about that. We just capture the b pawn, and now we have 3-0, which is unstoppable, I would think.
Yeah.
Takes
Here,
here,
I
and
want to
then
say my opponent
a5.
actually just ran out of time. We are probably going to
Oh,
keep playing at this point, but definitely it's a position I'm happy to play here. We have pawns running for
yeah.
the hills there and a knight on the other side of the board, which, you can try and stop it, but it's not going to work out. So,
Yeah, and that's why, like, I guess, like, knights have a good advantage with close positions, but then the long scope and open positions, like this position, the bishop is very strong. At one point, if you had, I don't know, another pawn here and your bishop here, the knight can never move out. So, sometimes our knights are tricky, but it's tricky to play them as well. you know?
yeah, you got to watch out for those things. But when you get into a nice open position like this, I think I take the bishop pretty much any time.
Really? Yeah. I usually prefer the knights, but I've been liking the bishops lately. They're very strong, and you can trap knights with one move. Sometimes it's like they cannot do anything. Perfect. Let's move on to the third game. So this game is a simultaneous exhibition. Where was this held at?
So this was at the Manassas Park Mall. So this is somewhere close to home for me,
Okay.
up in the Northern Virginia area. So this GM, Rashad Babaev, and I might be pronouncing his name a little bit off, but he is based out of DC. He does a lot of training and stuff up there, from what I'm aware.
Yeah.
But he comes down to this mall annually, and it's this fun event where he'll play a simultaneous exhibition, which is, of course, where one strong opponent will play several games at one time against a bunch of weaker opponents. And I signed up to be one of those weaker opponents for him to fight against. And so he gets the white pieces for that, just as one of the advantages, since, he's playing against so many people.
Yeah.
And it was real fun to watch. There were no clocks in this. Normally with your tournaments and stuff, you'll be playing with the clock. But for this, really, the only time pressure that we were under as the opponents was just have your move ready by the time he walks up to your board.
Okay.
And for him, he would walk around and just play his moves pretty quick on every board. And so he would just
usually
walk around in this big circle.
whenever the host, I guess in this case the GM, gets to your board, that's when you make your move, and then he replies right away. Something like that?
Totally.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. So here, e4. We're going for e4. The previous game against white, we had the d4, but now here, e4. What do you like to play against e4?
I play c6 most times. And
C6.
This is something, especially back then, I didn't have very much prepared for different lines. I just had seen a video or two on the Carl Khan, and I knew, okay, this is something. I can play this. And we'll see. Very quickly, my theoretical knowledge runs out, but this is what I still play to this day. I still play c6 to e4.
No, that's awesome. I play c6 too. Maybe like people think like, oh, it's not the best, but it's good enough. I think I like it. I mean, I'm used to it too. Like the Caracan, I love it. And here, right away, going for c5. So here, I guess we can like always opt for the option of the Tartakower, right? If like here it takes, you have the knight, and then you're thinking, oh, you're doubling up the pawns, but then at one point, if the knight comes here, it cannot really jump onto like e5 or g5, some ideas like that. But here you just went like right away for something strange, I guess, right? So like something different.
Yeah, I wanted to shake it up. I thought, okay, this seems. I'll be honest. Again, this was more out of ignorance than it was a calculated decision. Because nowadays I would go more into the Tartakower. You and I both painfully know, sadly, that I like to do that. We've played a game actually in a tournament where we kind of went into those lines, and it didn't end so well for me. But this is more what I played at the time, and so I thought, okay, let's just go ahead. Obviously, if he takes, then it's almost like a reverse Queen's Gambit, because then I'll like push my pawn somewhere or not that far, I could push it here maybe, and then I'd be able to take with the bishop. So I thought, we'll just do something like this. This seems like a solid way to move forward.
Okay, so
and I'll admit, he did.
Go ahead.
He did pause when he saw that move.
Really?
And I thought, yes, I've made him think. And then I realized, wait, no, that's not good. We're only on move 3. That means we're not doing something in theory. I've made what is probably a mistake. And so he was hunting for a way to punish it. And we'll see. Very quickly, he figures it out.
Yeah, because we can think like here, for example, if you were to capture, let's see, if they were to capture here, what was your idea, right? Like capturing back here, and if they capture, you capture the queen and like losing the castle on rights, or were you thinking about just pushing the pawn forward?
I can see some dream positions where maybe he makes some moves that don't make too much sense, and then it works out all right for me, because I have, if I can move this pawn right here, then I'll be able to take back. So I figure it'll be okay. But of course, nothing's forcing him to do that. So it was kind of based off of some wish list assumptions that didn't quite play out.
All right, so let's move forward here. Knight f3, and then we just pin the knight, and now they capture. So you go for knight d7. You don't even capture back the pawn, attack, like putting pressure on this. What was your thinking process, your thought process here? Why did you do
I think, again, you can see nerves getting the better of me here, because very quickly I realized, I've done something wrong. So how do I consolidate? I play way too passive, and that'll continue being a theme in this game. And that's why very quickly he tears apart my position, and he makes me regret even putting the bishop out here, because if I don't commit to a more aggressive play, if I don't actually line up with the queen and work it out, then there's not really any point. I shouldn't have put the bishop there in the first place if I'm going to play like this. So I think my thought process was I want to protect my pawn on the c file, but I think it might have been much better just to take.
Maybe, yeah. Okay, so the GM here goes for bishop b5. Now we're attacking the bishop with the queen, but very good move here. Just a4 by the opponent, just keeping that tension here. There's always an idea of, maybe kicking the bishop out. If something like this, you can capture here and lose your castle on rights. And then maybe even like give a check or something and pick up the... Actually, this would probably be better if like bishop here. Let's say here we don't do anything, and then they kick our bishop out. If we do bishop h5, you can take this one. Because if you take it with the king, you have a discover check on the king, ready for the fork, but also picking up the bishop here on h5. So very tricky now.
Yeah, very quickly, he's the one doing the wishful thinking, right? I had a lot of plans and they kind of all went out the window here.
It's okay, it happens. So castles, and now, I mean, yeah, we have g6, but a little bit slow. We want to castles like pretty
Very
fast,
slow.
but we can't. And now they're kicking us out here. And I guess your idea here with a6, right? If they capture with check, you can just capture with the bishop, right?
We can go back.
But then he has an in-between move, which your queen is a little bit trapped
Unfortunately,
here.
the queen's a bit of a bigger threat than the bishop, so I have to take care of the queen.
It's all right. It's okay. It's like queen moves here. And now d6. D6, I think, is an incredible move. Because now your king is stuck in the middle of the board. G6, very slow move, but you couldn't really do anything other than pushing e6 and then capturing again to relieve your, your bishop. But now d6, and you have to capture with the pawn. I mean, you don't have to. You can always move your queen as well or something, but it is very tricky, right? Check, and then retreating the bishop to defend, because also the bishop was being attacked, and now this bishop has been attacked, and now they capture with check, and here you capture with a king. So I guess we were reviewing some lines, right? We cannot really capture with the queen nor the knight because there's always the d5 push.
The
Right?
pawn comes in. I don't want to be pinned, so I figure, okay, I guess I have to make this concession now.
And we can kind of look at the taking with the queen here. We have d5, and the thing is, like, the bishop is pinned to the king, and if you capture here, they can always capture the knight because the bishop's still pinned. So it is tricky. And now you have ideas of forking the rook and the queen with the knight as well, or even here you have the in-between move of just doing that anyways. So very tricky. I guess we can go back here, and you capture with the king. Okay, they capture the pawn on c5, you capture back with the queen, and the knight's hanging. And the bishop, he doesn't even care about the knight hanging. The bishop attacks your queen, and you capture here.
Because you think the knight's hanging. And I'll tell you right here, I thought, okay, great. I have pressure on the knight. And I was very tunnel vision focused on that. I thought, great, because I make this move and he has to move the knight or defend it or something. He doesn't defend the knight. I think, great, I'll just take it now. Maybe this will get me back in the game. Don't take a knight. If you see a grandmaster give you a knight, they're not just giving it away for free. There's a reason. And here we can see the reason. The knight comes in right here. My pawn is not protecting that fork between the knight and the queen because the queen pins the pawn to my king. So therefore, we can just pretend that pawn isn't even there. The knight can hop in right here and get this nice little check there, the royal fork. I can't do anything about it.
That's and the game ended here. I'm assuming you resign, or do you keep on playing?
Just about. We played a little bit further. I thought I still have some rooks. He's so distracted with all these other people. Maybe I can catch him doing something.
You bring
No,
the
but
bishop
we
back.
resign here in just the next move because he takes. I resign right here.
Okay.
Because if I were to take, we'll see the queen come down, and I can't defend the rook. Unfortunately, it's not connected to the other rook. So
Yeah.
again, the development, even at the end of the game, the fact that I didn't develop quick enough, it's coming back to bite me here. So
Yeah. So I
really
guess.
just
So here, if we were to move like the king somewhere, you think, oh, you can kind of trap this. You cannot really trap the queen at all because nothing's.
unfortunately no.
Yeah. That's so here. I guess after this, just resignation. But I guess we can go back to each of the games that we just showed. The first game, we can kind of go back to the last bit of it. How do you feel at this tournament? How do you think you played at this tournament at the Idaho Closed? This is the most recent tournament that you've played at. What's your, how do you see yourself, like, what was your progress so far, starting from the first tournament that you've had up to this point, this game here?
Yeah, I think if you contrast to some of my older ones, this one was, there were still some mistakes, a few inaccuracies I found even in the games I won.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to be honest about that, right? You need to be very clear with yourself and say, okay, look at this. We still have to work on this. But I was very happy with the progress that I made. I think it's just as acceptable and probably just as necessary to say, okay, look at this. I've done better. And this was, I love this tournament. I had a really great time here. I was super excited because within the category I was ranked in, the D category, I was actually able, they gave me a plaque at the end of it for second place in that category. I was so excited about that. The first time I walked away with something physical I can hold from one of these.
Yeah.
So I took out a few opponents that were a little bit higher rated than me, and I was very happy about that. So I thought, okay, we still have a lot to learn, but I think there's definitely been a lot of progress in my journey of chess since these earlier tournaments that we saw. So
That's awesome. So what are your, do you have any chess goals? I don't know, maybe like short term, long term. What do you think? Or maybe online, for online rating or rated chess tournaments as well. Any goals specific that you have, or specifically?
online rating, I'm hoping by the time that I get out of college, by the time I finish with my degree, that I'll have cleared 2000, and who knows how far beyond that. That's definitely a very set goal that I want to go to. Beyond that, I have other smaller plans in the meantime that I want to be working on. One thing I definitely need to work a lot more on is um, my end games and opening knowledge. It's something that I think some people put a little bit too much emphasis on, where they think I'll just study this and I'll just have it all memorized. You can't do that. But at the same time, there is the flip side. You can't go into it completely blind, and that's more or less what I've been doing with some of these. We've seen the results of that. So
Yeah.
I have a little bit more studying I need to do in the meantime. But so long-term goals, short-term plans. Definitely, I have some rating goals and an idea of how to get there.
Any words of advice for those who are thinking of, hey, I never play a chess tournament in my life, but I would like to start at one point, and maybe they're holding that off, putting it in pause, just because they want to become stronger online, maybe, and just because of that, they're not going to any tournaments. What do you think about that? Any advice for them? Do you think like they should just start going to tournaments, or maybe actually just wait to get stronger before going to tournaments? What do you think?
I think there's no shame in going to these and just getting absolutely destroyed, a few games. That's okay. And like we said and established here, I feel like I learned a lot from playing over the board. There's a unique aspect there that you can't get with just a two-dimensional screen in front of you. I love playing online chess. I love watching videos, but I feel like I always walk away having learned a lot more from these physical games that I play over the board. And, I can speak pretty broadly here. I think just about everyone that I've met at these tournaments, very kind, very understanding to beginners, and they love seeing new people there. Trust me, the kinds of guys that play chess, they love to tell you all about it. So go there and feel free to ask pointers and stuff. I think if you want to get better at playing over the board, the best way to do it is to play over the board. You got to practice, and so I would totally recommend going to these things. I've come here and I have a good time. As we've established, I don't always play perfect games, but that's okay because it means that I can walk away having learned something new. So I would totally recommend, if you're looking to get better at it, just go there, just start trying, play a little bit reckless, have fun with it. And I think that's really the first step to getting better.
Thank you so much, Michael. Thank you for your time. And well, thank you all that have seen this video. We'll see you guys on the next one. Thank you.
Thanks so much for having me. See ya.